Did you send Chelsea a request also? She's luxury, just so you know, it's under luxury, Muskoka luxury property. Do you see it? I saw she joined.
Yeah, I saw. I
Okay.
accepted.
Sorry
Yeah.
about that.
No, I did the one. Sorry.
Is that okay like that? It's a little tipsy. It's a little tipsy from last night. My
Okay.
camera.
Hold on.
Why does your hair look so good?
Hi, ladies.
Hey,
How are you?
Chelsea, how are
There you go.
Chilling,
Okay,
Samantha.
sorry
Nice to
about
be
that.
here.
So we're so happy you were able to join us, because this is like the perfect timing for cottage country, so to speak. We all know that our spring market started a little bit later than we would have hoped for, and is typical in the cycle of real estate. But here we are. So
Happy to be with you. I'm reporting live from my car, as I usually do at this time of the year.
absolutely. Best way. We can see all the green back there. We don't have that in the city, so green.
Actually, I'm down near Lake Simcoe today, so it's a little more industrial and city-like than traditional Muskoka. It's unfortunate I couldn't have the lake in the background.
Oh, well, I just see green out of the little bit of window, so it's all good to me. Shh, don't tell anyone. So welcome. This is Chelsea's first time on our IG Live, Icons of Real Estate, and we welcome you, and we're really excited because, like I said, we really are excited about the cottage country market and what's going to happen this year. Everybody knows the last couple of years have been extremely hot, a lot of interest. COVID helped that big time.
Absolutely.
And we would love to hear from you, where you sort of, what's going on presently, and what do you see sort of happening over the next month or so?
Well, as you kind of touched on a little bit, timing is really big for cottage country. So we are just kind of ramping up our season now. There have been a number of properties that have already sold. However, a lot of them were off market. So be sure to work with a realtor.
Right.
So we are just getting a lot of listings hit the market. Everybody's busy and on the road trying to get everything set up and ready. It's looking like it's going to be a really strong season. We're probably going to be light on listings again this year, very similar to last year in 2020. So if things go well, we'll have lots of sales and lots of activity on the market, which is what we're all hoping for. It's looking like it's going to be a good season.
So it sounds like both Toronto and the cottage country areas are sort of experiencing the same thing in the lack of supply, which, as many of you know, what does that mean? That means the prices go up. It's simple supply and demand. So, like I said, timing is everything. You must be prepared if you're coming from the city and looking in the cottage country, or you're actually already living up there. Perhaps maybe that's your prime residence and you're just making a move within the area, moving up, moving down, downsizing, whatever. But you need to be prepared, because Toronto, we all know, you absolutely must be available as a buyer. Go ahead, Jill.
I want to ask a question. Are you
Sure.
finding that a lot of the listings are properties for sale, or are you finding a lot of properties for lease for the season? And do you find more and more people are moving out of the city or relocating, or they're just buying them as summer properties?
Okay, so two great questions there. First, we have a lot of lease properties, a lot of available rentals that are still, have vacancies. Typically, our rentals are a little bit different than what you would find in the city. We go week by week. Some cottage owners will prefer either 2 weeks or a month rental, but it's really for peak season. So we've got a number of rentals that are available. What we saw, especially throughout COVID, was an increase in buyers looking to rent out their places. So we've got a number of properties that are available. And as we all know, people are now going on an international basis and choosing different options outside of cottage country for their vacations. So we do have some vacancies with rentals, but they're always fairly strong. To get on Muskoka, Joe, or Rosso in something that's quite nice with 4 bedrooms, you're looking upwards of $20K a week. So it's a deep price point. When you think about it, there's a couple of families likely that would be able to, go there for a week. And so you're splitting it between 2, but the price tag's pretty severe. In terms of cottages, we always have a lack of inventory, especially for the last, I would say, 5 years or so. With cottages, I don't know what it's like in the city. I mean, you have a lot of places that are all beside each other, but with cottage country, every property is so unique and different. So, we've got buyers that will only look at properties that face southwest, for example. There's certain lakes that are more desirable to them. So we often have a lack of inventory on specific lakes and with specific features. So therefore, when those properties come up, they sell, within the first day or two, which is pretty phenomenal. Our market moves extremely quickly here. And, to your point, Samantha, you have to be ready. If you're not working with an agent that's on the go and looking at the properties within the first day they're listed, or doesn't have their ear to the ground that knows that a property's coming up, you're behind the 8 ball. And that's really difficult for people, especially with the price points we have. I think a lot of the buyers right now were really hopeful that prices would come down after, our crazy COVID mayhem, but they're just not.
And all the increases in the rates, I think people really anticipated prices coming down, but in both marketplaces, the city and outside the city, simply because of the lack of supply, it just didn't happen. So the prices are up there. What if somebody's looking? I mean, I sort of can eyeball and have a feel from the city because I know who's out of the city, which weeks, and everything. But if somebody is looking to rent in the summer, what are the weeks that you find are the busiest and the hardest to get, and people should actually be on it right now, even if it's for like the last week in August, for example?
Okay, so good question. So definitely the long weekends throughout the summer are the most attractive to buyers. So if that is your intention to be in Muskoka for the long weekends, you have to get on it right away. You actually should have probably been on it in January. Getting that in August, that's to be the most desired month for people to kind of come up here and start renting. And that's usually the first 3 weeks of August, because as you can appreciate, people, have kids or they've got things going on at home. So they want to be back for the last weekend of August and the first weekend of September to get their kids ready for school, to get everything set up so that they can be ready for, a busy year. And at that point, that's when cottage country starts to kind of, well, I wouldn't say depreciate in value. I would just say rentals and people that are looking for rentals certainly decline after the third week of August. Now, July is also extremely busy. So if you want to get into a cottage rental for July and August, you really need to get started right away, because there's a bunch of different, factors and features that you need to think about.
So going back to the beginning of the conversation, you were saying that buyers were renting the properties out. So it's sort of like if they could rent it out for a season, it helps them obviously with the carrying costs for the rest of the year. Do you find that anyone is interested in renting anything for Christmas time, or that's just not there?
So, what we've got throughout the rest of the year, any of the times that you get a couple of more days off than just, like a long weekend, we've got Christmas, New Year's, Family Day weekend, Easter, or March break, definitely, and spring break. Those are the weeks within the winter season, or the off season, as we call it, that you are more inclined to get people reach out for rentals. Outside of that, you've got a number of places that are available, but you have to imagine, a lot of our clients are owners of properties here. They're not year-round residents. So for them to keep their properties open and available for a one-off rental in the winter, they simply don't offer them. So we have less available rentals in the winter season.
So again, you're just having a lack of supply and demand, which keeps the prices up. And also, do you find that it sounds like during COVID, people were buying properties up north for themselves to use? However, now they might be using them for part of the summer, which, like you said, it sounds like there might be a little bit greater of a supply for rent. Just because people are gung-ho about traveling again, and their so-called property for themselves might be a little bit more of an investment property at this point.
Absolutely. I think, not just during COVID, but I think certainly in the last, 5 to 7 years, people have been seeing a great opportunity in terms of investing in Muskoka. A lot of people would laugh at me saying that just because of our price points. But really, when you think about it, if your intention is to use the cottage and use it only for a couple of weeks throughout the year, if you're able to rent it out and offset your costs, you're able to support a cottage purchase in addition to your home. So we're getting a lot of young people that are coming into the area that are buying, multi-million-dollar properties. And it's because they can basically float their investment through rentals.
Are you finding any difficulty with anyone getting financing on the properties because of the values, or things?
You know what, Cheryl, I'm not, but we really don't deal with financing a lot. I know in the city, and certainly it would be more prevalent in different price points. But in our area, this is kind of a secondary, a nice to have, and people are typically ready to go. They've already either dealt with financing, they've put an additional mortgage on their own primary residences, and they're ready to go. We usually don't see, financing conditions up here. We don't have financing in order to kind of make the transaction come together, but people will look into the options of financing later on after they've moved in, just kind of moving around their assets to make sure everything works for them financially.
It's interesting because you would think that, in the city, for example, people are buying small condos or different properties as investments to Airbnb, let's say, right? Because that, like you said, the last 5 to 7 years, this has become a thing because really Airbnb has shown and proven that the numbers make sense in order to, like you said, float the financing of the property, and so many people got involved in them. But in the city, when you're dealing with something like condos, for example, if it's a small building, the maintenance fees can really make it out of whack. Especially in the high end. Like Cheryl and I are very familiar with some of the high end boutique condos, and because they're small, the maintenance is so high that you got to be really careful. But luckily in the city, the rents have jumped so much that it seems to be working in most owners' favors. But in the cottage country area, what type of like, or what should people be aware of as those maintenance fees that might not occur in the city?
Well, first things first, you're owning individual properties, so you don't have a condo fee. What most cottagers do in this area is they'll get a property manager so that you've got somebody on site that can deal with everything. It's a must have when you're
Right.
renting out here. If you can imagine something goes wrong at the cottage and you've got renters there, you know, for example, the water's just not working. You need to have somebody that you can call on site, which is extremely important. One of the things that I usually tell to, you know, my clients that are looking for rental properties is two things. One is, you know, you need to be able to house a lot of people. The more people that you can house, the better off your rental. So, you know, you were referencing smaller places. Smaller places will rent here, but of course, your rental income is much smaller. You've got to have it looking nice because people don't drive up to look at the rentals here. They do it online. So it needs to be well represented online, usually 3 to 4 bedrooms. The other thing that's really important is some of the municipalities within our area are implementing rental restrictions, and you really need to be aware of that. So for example, one of the municipalities is the town of Huntsville. In the town of Huntsville, you actually have to have a rental permit in order to rent. So of course, you know, you've got people circulating, and if they don't know these things, they're investing in the wrong areas. Not to mention, some of the municipalities are looking to adopt rental restrictions. So you just need to be aware of what's going on. There's changes that are happening, and they're happening very quickly because Muskoka has really exploded in terms of the number of people wanting to rent.
What kind of restrictions? An example of a restriction?
A property that I had last year, actually, it was on a smaller lake just outside of Huntsville. They had a property, they had a permit to rent, okay? And that's something that comes from the township. One of their issues was you get 2 strikes. So the first strike that they had was that the renters were outside past 11 o'clock, and one of the neighbors happened to call on them, and they got a strike. These people had bought it. I actually didn't represent them on the sale, but they ended up using, I didn't represent them on the buy. They ended up using me to list it later on. But they had issues because they didn't get a rental manager. And what ended up happening is they were called at 11 o'clock to tell their renters to go in, and nobody responded within a timely manner. So that's 1 strike. And you can very quickly get strikes, and then your rental permit is revoked. So if you've invested in a rental property and you've now lost the right to rent,
Right.
you're in for a big problem.
In other words, if you're renting your property out, make sure you qualify your so-called tenants or people who are going to be staying there. Because, you know, it's funny you bring that up. I remember talking to a lawyer about a situation where somebody had called him and said, "You're not going to believe this," but it was like this crazy situation where it was a criminal lawyer, and they made a comment. These people own their house, but the house beside was an Airbnb. Well, the Airbnb people were being really, really rowdy, like really bad, and started throwing like beer cans or something. So language was not smart on behalf of this particular person. In all fairness, they're like, "You guys aren't from here," and this was up in the I don't know if it was quite cottage country, but it was definitely north of the city. And they said, "If you do not get out of here or stop doing that, I am going to pull out my rifle." They actually didn't really have a rifle. It was very poor language on this. They got called. They got the cops called. The tenant renters, like Airbnbs, they called the police on them because they threatened with a rifle. This guy didn't even really have a rifle. It was just a threat. But you gotta be careful with your language. This is not Texas.
I've definitely never heard of anything that crazy. And I have had rentals.
You gotta be friendly with a lot of criminal lawyers. You
Yeah,
get
you
really
do.
good
You know what? In
stories.
our area, you have to be friends with everybody. Let's be serious. You need to be able to call someone. But I had an instance where renters that I put somewhere, they actually had too many people for the rental. And in our area, everything's on septic systems. So that's something that's really important too. If you get a call from a neighbor because you've got 20 people at the
Oh my God.
place and you've got 3 or 4 bedrooms, you're in trouble. The septic cannot handle that. And then you'll get bylaw called on you, and you have potential of getting kicked out of your rental.
Do you know somebody's Muskoka Joe? Thank you. I don't know what 28-day minimum is referring to. Did we touch upon that?
We did not touch upon that. He might be talking about, higher end rentals that people need to rent for almost a month or at least 4
So
weeks.
restrictions, basically, he's maybe referring to restrictions that might be placed on your investment property rental that you might want to be aware of.
Absolutely. And
if not, Muskoka Joe, I just made that up. And it sounds good to me. So thanks for bringing it up.
Well, I'm sure Joe will chime in. Yes, here we go.
Okay.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you would want to share at this point for people who are considering the possibility of either purchasing or investing in real estate in Muskoka or Simcoe or any of our cottage countries that we haven't touched upon?
Well, I mean, not that we haven't touched upon. Really important to use a realtor and a local realtor. I mean, they kind of know the area. They know the restrictions. They know what you need to know, and they're able to kind of help you. Secondly, really just have a good idea of what you're looking for. That really helps your realtor fine tune your search. If you're not willing to look at something that needs work, you need to let them know that. I'm finding that, especially in the last couple of years, there are certainly deals to be had in Muskoka. There's some good investments that are out there. A lot of them will have some sort of work that is needed, whether it's a renovation, whether you need to build a boathouse to add value. I think there's lots of those opportunities around that are being missed because buyers come up, they want to utilize and they want to envision themselves at the cottage and they want it to be turnkey. But not every property is like that. You know, these are properties that people get into and they spend time with their family and they fall in love and they never want to leave. And with that being said, that's usually a couple of years. So you certainly have time to invest, to get to know your cottage, to add value, which is really great.
Yeah, and that's a good point. In any property, whether it's in the city or in the country, yes, as Cheryl and I always say, time is of the essence, and people have more money than time sometimes. But that being said, we also know that when you have the time to put money into your property, it'll be more valuable down the road for you.
For sure.
We have to jump off because we have to be on another Zoom at 2:30. I'm just watching the time. I saw your face, Mom.
No problem. Thanks for your time, ladies. It was so great to kind of hop on with you, and I will see you at the next HK event.
Yes, and let's definitely do this again as an update, maybe in July or something, just to see how things are going.
Awesome. You know what? If we do that, I will make sure to have a lake behind me next time.
Yes, for sure.
All right, ladies. Thank you so much.
Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Enjoy your day.
Bye.
Bye.